Chapter 31. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Bandit Stronghold Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation, the Xianin sect again. Hearing this, a cold light flashed across Yi Xian's eyes. Huang Ling and Xue Min had said earlier that the cultivation practitioners of the Xianin sect had taken over most of the cities of the Great Xian dynasty under the banner of suppressing bandits. It now truly seemed to be the case. However, it was impossible for those fellows from the Xianin sect to be so benevolent. What exactly were they plotting? I don't need specific information. As the city lord of Yunhei City, you should at least be aware of the number of bandits in Yunhei's city vicinity, right? You just need to tell me their general locations. Yi Xian said. Yes, sir. Lin Yuan nodded, and then ordered his servants to retrieve the information about the bandits from the city lord's mansion. After Lin Yuan handed over the information, Yi Xian used his spiritual sense to scan and memorize all of the information. Yi Xian then waved his sleeve and turned into a ray of light, leaving with you and the others. Looking at the direction where Yi Xian disappeared, Lin Yuan's eyes flickered. He also had some doubts in his heart. As the second-best sect in the Great Xian dynasty, the strength of the Xianin sect was undeniable. Under normal circumstances, the other party should have wiped out all the bandits around Yunhei City easily after taking over the task of suppressing the bandits. However, for some reason, as time passed, the bandits around Yunhei City became more and more rampant. Previously, they had only gone after the wealth of the surrounding villages, but now they were starting massacres. At that moment, Lin Yuan felt an inexplicable sense of foreboding. However, whenever he sent people to observe the behavior of the cultivation practitioners of the Xianin sect, he found that the other party had indeed been suppressing the bandits. Especially those bandits who were brutal and massacred the villages, they were all killed mercilessly by the practitioners of the Xianin sect. However, the strange thing was that the number of the bandits around Yunhei City did not decrease, but increased instead, despite more and more bandits being killed. Lin Yuan had once suspected those practitioners of the Xianin sect, but he did not dare to interfere in the affairs of the Xianin sect after the leader of the other party exerted pressure on him. He knew very well that he was only a small city lord of Yunhei City. Even if the Xianin sect was plotting something, it was not something a small figure like him could interfere with. Swoosh! The spiritual power in Yi Xian's body gushed out, bringing you and the others along with him at an extremely fast speed, tearing through the sky and heading toward the direction of the mountain. It was clear from the information just now that there were a total of 23 bandit strongholds around the Yunhei City. Of course, this was after excluding those bandits who had already been eliminated. He headed toward the east of Yunhei City. If those bandits who massacred Lin Shi village were still alive, then they were most likely hiding in this area. A vast and boundless mountain in the east of Yunhei City. This place was only 20 kilometers away from the Netherworld forest. On this steep mountain, one could see some stone houses. There were many caves on the mountain, and these houses were connected to these caves in an ingenious way. Looking at it from afar, it was indeed quite marvelous. Many people lived in these caves or stone houses. This was a mountain bandit stronghold near Yunhei City. They called themselves the Mountain Wonder Stronghold. The composition of this group of bandits was extremely complicated. Many of them were cultivators who were wanted by the Great Xian dynasty's officials, and there were also some desperate people. Other than that, there were also many abandoned disciples from the various sections. However, at this moment, they had all gathered in this mountain stronghold. All their old identities had been thrown away, and now everyone here was just a bandit. 3 days ago, they had gathered their numbers and completely robbed a village 9 miles away from here. Not only did they take away all the wealth and food of the villagers, but they also took with them all of the young and beautiful women in the village. Of course, there were many villagers who chose to resist, but only death awaited them. After all, the bandit leader of the mountain stronghold had reached the 3rd level of the true essence state, and the strongest one in the village they had killed had only reached the 7th level of the refinement state, so how could they possibly resist the invasion of these bandits? The whole village was plunged into a sea of blood and despair. The strong villagers who resisted the bandits had all been killed, and the young and beautiful women had been taken away. Even the newborn babies had been mercilessly killed by these bandits. These bandits were like merciless killing machines. They brought the loot they had stolen back to the village and held a celebration party. Why don't you scream? If I scream, do you dare not to scream? Are you dead? Can't you hear what I'm saying? At this moment, a man's impatient voice could be heard from inside one of the caves. The man mercilessly slapped the woman's face. The broad and thick palm was imbued with a strong force. The woman's face was slightly deformed from the slap. A red palm print suddenly appeared on her face, and streams of blood flowed out from the corner of her mouth. However, the woman did not seem to feel anything. Her eyes were empty, and no screams emerged from her mouth. Her eyes were filled with despair. She had given up on life in this world. She could not even commit suicide in the hands of these brutal and shameless bandits. F***ck, this is boring. The man slapped the woman's face again, and then pulled up his pants. He spat on the woman's face and left the cave with an unhappy expression. How boring. If this B***tch doesn't cooperate in a few days, then I'll kill her. After leaving the cave, the man walked outside and took a deep breath. His expression was still vicious. However, the next second, his expression changed. What? 4 figures suddenly appeared in his field of vision, a man and 3 women. Most importantly, they did not rely on any magic treasures and just stood there in mid-air. How is this possible? Who are you? When the man saw this scene, his pupils shrank and his body trembled. They were able to stand in the air without relying on any magic treasures, which could only mean one thing. This could only be achieved by core formation state cultivators, who were far above the true essence state. Yi Xian looked at the man indifferently, but, beside him, Huang Ling and Xue Min's eyes were filled with monstrous rage. Yu's fingernails were digging into her palm. Her eyes seemed as if they were about to spit fire, and her small body trembled with anger. This mountain housed one of the bandit strongholds in Lin Yuan's information. What happened? The bandits in the cave seemed to have sensed the movement outside and hurried out. When their eyes caught sight of Yi Xian and the others floating in the air, their expressions also changed. My lords! One of the bandits was about to speak, but he was directly cut in half by Huang Ling's sword. Whoosh! Whoosh! A few sharp sword lights flashed, and the robbers who came out of the cave were all killed by Huang Ling's sword. Yi Xian also narrowed his eyes, and then indifferently said, "Kill." Huang Ling and the others acknowledged the order. The spiritual power fluctuations gushed out. Holding their weapons, they charged at the bandits. At that moment, countless bandits revealed panicked expressions as they frantically fled in all directions. At the same time, they frantically shouted, "We're being attacked! We're being attacked!" Chapter 32. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Mastermind Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. What happened? Who dares to attack our mountain stronghold? At this moment, a middle-aged man walked out of a rather luxurious stone house. The middle-aged man looked at the mountain bandits who were running away in a panicked state and frowned. Second Commander, there's trouble. Powerful cultivators are attacking our mountain stronghold. When the bandits spotted the second commander, they quickly gathered around him as if they had seen their savior. When the second commander saw this, he could not help but squint his eyes. Very quickly, he saw 3 women wielding sharp weapons, quickly reaping the lives of the bandits. What beautiful girls! When the second commander saw you, he immediately revealed a lewd expression. However, his expression quickly changed. The strength of the bandits was not weak. However, this group of women were easily taking their lives. It was obvious that these women were strong. Brothers, quickly go back and get your weapons. Let's capture these 3 girls. The second commander roared angrily. He then returned to the stone house and took out a sharp long knife. Follow the second commander and capture the girls together. Under the second commander's lead, the bandits instantly became more confident. They rushed toward Huang Ling and the others with long sabers, sticks, and other weapons. However, their expressions soon changed. The cultivation levels of these 3 women was extremely powerful. They could not even get close to them before being cut into 2 by the sharp sword chi. Shwa. As a terrifying sword chi flashed past, a stone house not far away suddenly split into 2 and instantly exploded. Damn it! These girls are so powerful. The second commander saw this scene and narrowed his eyes. It was obvious that these 3 women had not used their full strength earlier, which caused him to misjudge their strength. The strength they were showcasing now indicated that all 3 of them had definitely reached the true essence state. Although he was not weak, he was only at the first level of the true essence state, and not very strong either. Any core disciple of the major sects who was at the same cultivation level as him would be able to easily crush him. These 3 women were so young, but their cultivation levels had already reached the true essence states. They had to be genius cultivators from one of the top sections. Given their strength, the bandits were no match for them. Therefore, he had to seize the opportunity to escape with his life. Brothers, hurry up and kill them. Don't be afraid. The second commander roared angrily and urged the surrounding bandits to charge toward Huang Ling's group. However, the very next second, he stopped and suddenly ran in the other direction frantically. Humph! Can you escape? Seeing this, Yu's eyes gleamed with a cold light. The sword in her hand shone brilliantly. In an instant, she had blown away more than a dozen bandits and was charging toward the second commander. Damn it! Seeing this, the second commander's expression could not help but change. The long blade in his hand then released his true essence energy, chopping off a rock that weighed thousands of jin which smashed toward Yu. He wanted to use the power of the huge rock to hinder Yu's pursuit. Shwa! Shwa! However, he was destined to be disappointed. The sword in Yu's hand shone with a bright light. The sharp sword chi instantly crushed the huge rock into pieces. Whoosh! With a flash sword chi, the second commander's body was bisected. Such a large commotion had taken place in the stronghold, so the first commander naturally noticed it. However, after seeing the power Huang Ling and the others displayed, he immediately decided to retreat. While the second commander and the others were fighting against Huang Ling, he quietly used the stronghold's secret passage to escape. Had it only Huang Ling and the others, the first commander might indeed have been able to escape quietly. Unfortunately, there was still Yi Xian, who had reached the golden core state. The next second, a pressure that caused even the first commander's soul to feel fear quietly spread out. His footsteps suddenly stopped, and his body could not stop trembling. Most importantly, he found that he could no longer move. There was no helping it. The difference in strength between the 2 sides was too great. A mere third-level true essence state commander was like an ant in Yi Xian's eyes. Ah! Swish! Rumble! Within a short period of time, all the bandits in the mountain stronghold had been eliminated. Yi Xian, who was standing on top of a huge rock, stretched out his hand and gently made a grabbing motion. The secret passageway in the mountain stronghold immediately burst open, and then a terrifying invisible force grabbed the first commander's neck and pulled him out. The first commander's eyes were filled with despair. He wanted to kneel down and beg for mercy, but not only could he not move, he could not even speak. Yi Xian could not be bothered to listen to him. His powerful spiritual sense directly invaded the commander's soul as he used the simplest and most violent method to find the information he wanted. Okay. Let's go. After finding the information he needed, Yi Xian gently patted the first commander's body and it immediately exploded. Yi Xian then turned around and looked at Yu. Master, Nov calm seeing this, Yu's hand that was holding the Qingyun sword could not help but tremble slightly. She naturally knew what Yi Xian implied. Her master had already found the whereabouts of the group of bandits who had massacred her village 2 years ago. It was true that Yi Xian had indeed found the whereabouts of those bandits from the memories of the first commander. Coincidentally, not only did the first commander of this mountain stronghold know what had happened 2 years ago, but he also knew some information related to the Xianin sect. The reason why the bandits around Yinhe city were so brutal was indeed related to the Xianin sect. Those cultivation practitioners from the Xianin sect were actually commanding those bandits to slaughter the villagers. Their purpose was very simple, they wanted to collect enough qi and blood essence. The Xianin sect really deserves to die. At that moment, there was a cold gleam in Yi Xian's eyes. Although the memories of the first commander indicated that he did not know whether those cultivation practitioners were from the Xianin sect at first, after Yi Xian saw the martial techniques displayed by the other party, he knew the identity of the other party. Moreover, it was clear from the first commander's memories that the massacre in Yu's village had something to do with the Xianin sect. Were it not for the instruction of those cultivation practitioners of the Xianin sect, that group of bandits would not have massacred Yu's village. At most, they would have plundered and stolen the wealth of the villagers. At first, that group of bandits only plundered the wealth of the village. However, under the instruction of the cultivation practitioners of the Xianin sect, they returned and massacred all of the villagers in Linshi village. The reason for this was simple. The Xianin sect had agreed to give them cultivation methods, medicinal pills, and weapons as long as they massacred all the villagers. The Mountain Wonder Stronghold, where the first commander was located, also received similar benefits from the Xianin sect. Under the instruction of the cultivation practitioners of the Xianin sect, the first commander and the others had massacred 3 villages. Whether it was an old man with a foot in the grave or a newborn child, they had all been slaughtered. Chapter 33 You are listening at novelfull.audio. Bloodstones, the intentions of the Xianin sect translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The purpose of the Xianin sect was very simple, they wanted to obtain the qi and blood essence of the villagers. When a human died, the qi and blood essence in their body would be released quickly. Normally, the qi and blood essence would dissipate into heaven and earth. However, if one had a special method or magic treasure, they could collect the qi and blood essence. The reason why the cultivation practitioners of the Xianin sect could collect the qi and blood essence was because each one of them carried a treasure called a bloodstone. Through the use of the bloodstone, they could absorb the qi and blood essence of the dead. By some lucky coincidence, the first commander had overheard a discussion among the cultivation practitioners that the Xianin sect was collecting the qi and blood essence of these human beings not for their own personal cultivation purposes, but rather for the sect, and that these bloodstones had to be handed over to the sect elders. When Yi Xian saw this scene in the first commander's memories, he had a flash of realization when he recalled the various cultivation methods of the Xianin sect over the past few years. He had already seen through the intentions of the Xianin sect. Qi and blood essence were the core cultivation requirements for a cultivation practitioner who had broken through to the peak of the core formation state. Most importantly, the amount of qi and blood essence required for a cultivation practitioner to break through to the unity realm was an astronomical figure. The Xianin sect sent their cultivation practitioners to various cities in the Great Qian dynasty. On the surface, they were acting under the banner of righteousness to suppress the bandits, but, in fact, they were instructing the bandits to slaughter the villagers and secretly collecting the qi and blood essence. After that, they brought the qi and blood essence back to the sect using the bloodstones. The qi and blood essence in a single person's body was limited, but it would be a different story if they slaughtered hundreds of people. As long as enough people were involved, they would be able to gather enough qi and blood essence. With such a huge amount of qi and blood essence, would it not be easy for a cultivation practitioner in the late stage of the golden core state to reach the peak stage of the core formation state or beyond? The Great Qian dynasty had a population of hundreds of millions, and the Tianyuan continent was a cultivation world where the strong preyed on the weak. Even if a large number of people were killed every day, the royal family of the Great Qian dynasty would not be able to detect anything as long as these massacres were dealt with quietly. After all, these bandits were mostly desperados, and many of them had massacred villages before, so it would be difficult to detect any changes if the cultivators of the Xianin sect merely ordered the massacres of a few more villages here and there. What a good plan! Thinking this, Yi Xian sneered. He had basically learned that there was a powerful old cultivator hidden in the Xianin sect, whose cultivation had at least broken through to the late stage of the golden core state. It seemed that the plan to seek revenge on the Xianin sect would have to be delayed a few more days. At the very least, his cultivation base had to break through to the late stage of the golden core state or the peak stage of the golden core state. He would head to Jiangqing City later instead. If Li Qinyan could pass his test, he would take her in as his disciple. At that point, he would be able to gain more rewards from the system, after which his cultivation would likely reach the late stage of the golden core state. Let's go. Yi Xian then waved his sleeve, and a huge amount of power gushed forth from his body. It swept up Yu and the others and flew away. After Yi Xian and the others left, there were sounds of crying and weeping echoing all over the mountain stronghold. We are finally saved. Ali, Ali, where are you? The group of animals who abused us have all been killed by our benefactor. We are finally free. These godforsaken B*****stards finally got their comeuppance. Oh God, you've finally opened your eyes and delivered justice. Thank you, benefactor. Thank you, benefactor. Many naked women knelt down in the direction where Yi Xian and the others had left. Their faces were full of gratitude. Xiao Xue, we can go home now. Is our home still there? According to the first commander's memories, the bandits who had massacred Lin Shi village were gathered at a place called Shidong. They called their village Fengxian Stronghold. The bandits in the mountain village had all drifted together from extremely distant places. Originally, they wanted to continue drifting in search of a relatively wealthy city before robbing their homes. However, just after they finished robbing Lin Shi village, a few mysterious cultivators suddenly came knocking on their doors. They claimed to be from a large sect, and wanted to cooperate with the bandits. Their proposal was very simple. The cultivators wanted them to slaughter a village within a set period of time. The wealth, food, and those young and beautiful women in the village would all belong to the bandits. As for the mysterious cultivators, they only needed to obtain the qi and blood essence of the villagers when they were on the verge of death. The rewards offered by the other party were also very tempting. They would be given some relatively high-level cultivation methods, as well as expensive medicinal pills and martial techniques. This business deal was simply too good to pass up. The leader of the group of mountain bandits agreed without the slightest hesitation. The mountain bandits were originally vagrants. Robbing, burning, killing, and plundering were just trivial matters to them. Hearing that they would even be rewarded generously for their crimes, they all jumped at the opportunity. Therefore, under the instruction of those mysterious cultivators, within these 2 years, they had already massacred 6 villages. If things had been the same as before, the city lord's mansion would have furiously mobilized a large number of cultivation practitioners to encircle and suppress them. However, after 2 years, the city lord's mansion of Yinhei City had not shown any sign of activity. They even heard that the cultivation practitioners of the Xianin sect had taken on the mission to suppress the bandits. Just as they were starting to feel fearful, those mysterious cultivation practitioners appeared again. They made it clear that they had a friendly relationship with the cultivation practitioners of the Xianin sect and those that worked with them would not be targeted by them. Later on, the mountain stronghold slaughtered 2 more villages. After realizing that the cultivation practitioners of the Xianin sect had remained silent, they finally felt relieved. Today, they had received another mission from those mysterious cultivation practitioners, and were supposed to slaughter another village. However, the village was close to 30 kilometers away from their mountain stronghold. The first commander had already led most of the bandits to that village early in the morning. Currently, there were only a few people left guarding the mountain stronghold. Inside a simple and unadorned wooden house in the Fengxian stronghold, a man dressed in cyan black robes sat cross-legged on the bed. His gaze landed on a bloodstone in front of his chest. Looking at the dense blood essence gushing out from the bloodstone, he revealed a satisfied expression. Phew! The mission was finally completed. Once senior brother returns, I can return to the sect to complete the mission. The man muttered to himself. Chapter 34. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Exterminating the Fengxian Stronghold Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. I won't need those bandits from the Fengxian Stronghold after this. When they come back, I'll send them off to the underworld. At that moment, the man's lips curled up into a sneer. He was a cultivation practitioner from the Xianin sect, though the bandits in the stronghold did not know that. They believed that he was a cultivator from some mysterious sect. The Xianin sect had always been brutal in terms of their methods and techniques. Now that the mountain stronghold had lost its value, there was no need for it to exist anymore. Once they completed their mission, it was time to tie up loose ends. In this way, not only could they keep the bloodstones a secret, but they could also put on an act for the great Qian dynasty to see. Over the past few years, the Fengxian stronghold had become a well-known bandit stronghold that everyone in the Yunhe city wanted to destroy. As long as they completely eradicated the Fengxian stronghold, they would definitely gain the support of countless people. Not only would they be able to obtain a huge amount of qi and blood essence, but they would also be able to improve the image of their sect at the same time. It was like killing two birds with one stone. This man and another cultivation practitioner of the Xianin sect were the ones responsible for supervising the Fengxian stronghold. That way, if they discovered that someone wanted to leak the secret, it would be easier for them to eradicate the enemy. Although these bandits were not aware of their origins, it would be bad if other cultivation practitioners of other sects recognized their identities. The bloodstone on the man's chest had absorbed enough qi and blood essence when he was slaughtering another village a while back. Now, he just needed to wait for his senior brother's bloodstone to absorb enough qi and blood essence before their mission was complete. There would be no reason to keep Fengxian stronghold around then. Not good. Enemy attack. Just as the man put away the bloodstone, a series of panicked shouts suddenly echoed throughout the stronghold. What? The man frowned when he heard this, and then he quickly walked out. He saw that there were 4 people attacking Fengxian stronghold, 1 man and 3 women. How can there be such a beautiful woman? When the man's eyes landed on you, his eyes lit up. However, his expression changed drastically shortly after. How is this possible? She's actually a 5th level true essence state cultivator. The next second, the sword in Yu's hand emitted a sharp aura, and then she charged toward the bandits of Fengxian stronghold. The true essence in her body swept out, and a powerful force quickly reaped the lives of those bandits. Huang Ling and Xue Min, who were beside her, did not make a move. This was also Yi Xian's intention. The bandits of Fengxian stronghold were the murderers who had massacred Lin Shi village. Logically speaking, you should take revenge herself. Only then would she be able to completely resolve the knot in her heart. The strength of a 5th level true essence state cultivator was so powerful that none of the bandits were a match for her. They could not even withstand a single blow from you. Some of these bandits were in the Qi transformation state, though most were at the peak of the refinement state. How could they withstand Yu's attacks? Yu's movement technique was as fast as a cheetah's. Even when faced with dozens of bandits who were working together, none of them could land a blow on her. Damn it, this woman's strength is too terrifying. Hurry up and run. The bandits who were still alive cried out with fear. After seeing their companions fall one by one, how could they still have any thoughts of resisting? Damn it! Where did these people come from? Seeing this scene, the man's expression also changed greatly. He then moved his body and retreated frantically. Although his cultivation had also reached the 5th level of the true essence state, he could not help but feel his heart palpitate when he felt the true origin power emitted from Yu's body. He was especially wary of that long sword. Its grade was definitely not ordinary. Even if he attacked, he might not be able to defeat Yu. More importantly, she did not come alone. Especially that man standing on top of the huge rock. Although he did not sense any spiritual power fluctuations from that man, when his gaze landed on that man, his heart trembled. That man's cultivation must have reached an extremely terrifying level. It was at the very least not lower than the purple spirit state. Damn it! It just so happens that senior brother isn't here. Why did this group of people come over at this time? Why do that woman's moves feel so familiar? I think I've seen it somewhere before. Could it be that this woman is from a top-tier sect? Once the man made his way beyond Yi Xian's line of sight, the power in his body gushed out crazily, and then he ran away quickly. Several thoughts flashed through his mind. However, at this moment, he felt an extremely terrifying pressure fall from the sky, suppressing him to the point that he could not move at all. This is the pressure of a core formation state cultivator. Realizing this, the man widened his eyes in astonishment. He was a cultivator from the Xianin sect, so how could he not know what such powerful pressure represented? Only a core formation state cultivator could render a 5th level true essence state cultivator like him unable to move using just his spiritual pressure. Damn it! How did I end up meeting such a powerful cultivator? The man cursed in despair helplessly. The very next second, an invisible force suddenly grabbed the man's neck and pulled him over to Yi Xian's side. Ah! Messenger, please save us. Help! I don't want to die yet. The man who was held in the air by an invisible force could only watch as all the bandits in the stronghold were slaughtered. Although the first commander of the Fengxian stronghold had taken away most of the forces, the 4th commander of the Whirlwind stronghold was still alive. He was a cultivator who had reached the 1st level of the core formation state. However, all of his comrades had fallen at the hands of the woman holding the longsword. As expected, it's the Xianin sect again. Yi Xian reached out his hand and gently waved it, easily catching the man in front of him. At the same time, a bright light flashed and the bloodstone in the man's arms suddenly landed in Yi Xian's palm. Seeing this, the man's eyes flickered furiously. He wanted to struggle, but he could not free himself from the invisible power at all. Bang! Yi Xian gently squeezed his palm and the bloodstone in his palm instantly turned into nothingness. The rich qi and blood power slowly dissipated back into heaven and earth. Just the impure qi and blood essence was not enough to tempt him. Only those old monsters at the end of their lifespan would come up with such a crazy idea of wanting to use the impure qi and blood essence from mortals to break through. Chapter 35. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Savage Bandits Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The next second, Yi Xian's spiritual sense suddenly invaded the man's mind, and he used extremely violent methods to examine the man's memories. After obtaining the information he needed, the man's soul was also torn apart and dissipated. They are heading to Tashi village. Yi Xian snapped his fingers lightly, and the man immediately exploded and turned into nothingness. His gaze then fell on Yu, who was not far away. Blood dripped from Yu's sword, and her body was covered with the scent of blood. As she stared at the destruction she had wrought in the stronghold, there was not a trace of pity on her face. It was this group of bandits who had brutally massacred her village back then. While she did not remember many enemies, the 4th commander who had fallen under her sword was one of them. Back then, it was this fourth commander who had wielded a long saber and slaughtered Lin Shur village. He did not even spare the elderly and newborn children. You would never forget the appearance of the fourth commander. The sword in her hand did not hesitate to split the fourth commander in twain. Just before the light from the fourth commander's eyes faded away, his mind seemed to recall something. The terrifying girl in front of him wielding a longsword seemed to be the lone survivor from Lin Shur village 2 years ago. She had come back to take revenge. However, how could a powerless girl become so strong in just 2 years? The fourth commander could not comprehend this. He died with a face full of unwillingness. Whoosh! Yi Xian waved his sleeve and then flew away with Yu and the others. They headed toward Tashi village, where the rest of Yu's remaining enemies were gathered. In Tashi village. What are you waiting for? If you don't hurry up, I'll chop you into pieces. Hurry up and cooperate. Hand over all of the wealth in the village and the food. Damn it. What are you looking at? Are you looking to die? The bandits held sharp weapons in their hands and roared at the villagers ferociously. Some of the villagers who wanted to resist had their arms and legs broken by them. Those who dared to look them in the eye would be slapped in the face. The difference in strength between the two sides was too big, so the villagers could only endure the humiliation in order to survive. They hurriedly returned to their homes and took out all their wealth and food. If they were slightly slower, their limbs would be broken by these bandits. However, that was not the worst part. Some of the more brutal bandits directly cut them down with their blades. Hurry up. Don't waste our time. Right at this moment, a man wearing a cyan robe was shouting impatiently. The middle-aged man next to him nodded with an ingratiating smile. Okay. I will go and urge them. The burly middle-aged man was the first commander of the Fengxian stronghold. He was a cultivation practitioner who had reached the 5th level of the true essence state, and his name was Baduluo. The person Baduluo was trying to please was the cultivation practitioner from the Xianin sect. This Xianin cultivator's identity was not simple. He was the personal disciple of an elder, and also Duan Wujie's brother. His name was Duan Wui, and he was a cultivation practitioner who had reached the 8th level of the true essence state. Hurry and finish up. If you see anyone dawdling, drag them out and chop them up. Baduluo then shouted, Did you hear that? I told you to be faster. Are you deaf? The next second, one of the bandits kicked a hunchbacked man who was carrying several bags of food. I'm sorry. I know I'm wrong. I'll move faster. Although the hunchbacked man was extremely angry, he could only smile and restrain himself. He did not dare to display any dissatisfaction. After all, he did not have the slightest talent when it came to cultivation. He was just an ordinary civilian. A few years ago, when he went to the mountains to search for yams, he was attacked by demonic beasts. Although he was lucky enough to survive, his back had indeed suffered serious injuries. After that incident, he became a hunchback. As his back and waist injuries were chronic, he could only carry 2 bags of food with much effort. Naturally, his speed was much slower than the other able-bodied villagers. He was extremely clear in his heart that ordinary citizens like him were nothing but ants in the eyes of these bandits and cultivators. In any case, these bandits were only robbing them of wealth and food. As long as they could ensure the safety of their wives and children, they would do what was necessary to satisfy them. Dignity did not matter here. For the safety of his family, he was willing to let them trample on him. It's already too late to apologize. The bandit had a vicious expression on his face as the corners of his mouth curled up into a cold smile. The long saber in his hand flickered with a sharp light as he slashed down toward the hunchbacked man. Swoosh! As the dazzling saber light flashed past, fresh blood instantly gushed out. Father! A 5 or 6-year-old boy in the crowd could not help but let out a heart-wrenching cry of sadness when he saw this. Husband. At the same time, the woman beside the boy also knelt on the ground in grief. Her face was filled with a mournful expression as she charged toward the bandit without caring about anything else. You animals, if you want money, I'll give you money. Why didn't you let him go? You're courting death. When the bandit saw this, the fierce expression on his face became even more intense. The long saber in his hand slashed down once again. Another stream of bright red blood spurted out. Mother! When the boy saw this scene, he cried out miserably. Tears streamed down his face, and his eyes were filled with despair. His fingernails dug deeply into the palm of his hand, so deeply that they drew blood. The boy cried while looking at the bandit with immense hatred, after which he charged out of the crowd like a madman and charged toward the corpses of his parents. Even if the target was a child, there was no pity in the eyes of the bandit. He slowly raised the long saber again. Little Zhongbin, don't be rash. These animals are too much. They are treating human lives like grass. Villagers, let's not endure it anymore. We will perish together with these animals. Many of the men in the village were furious. Their eyes were filled with hatred toward this group of mountain bandits. They wanted to rush over and save the boy. However, the strongest among them was only at the third level of the refinement state. How could they resist these bandits? The sharp saber light flashed again. It was about to split the boy's head into two. Chapter 36. You are listening at novelfull.audio. You. Do you still remember me? Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Show. A sword chi that exuded a resplendent light flashed past. The long saber in the bandit's hand instantly shattered. At the same time, there was the sound of flesh being torn apart. The bandit's body instantly stiffened. He lowered his head with great difficulty and saw a deep wound on his chest in which his bones were visible. This. How? The light in the robber's eyes gradually faded, and he collapsed to the ground dead. Who's there? Seeing this, Baduluo's eyes darted around, and his expression instantly turned vigilant. However, Duan Wui's gaze immediately turned toward a certain direction. The figures of a man and 3 women slowly appeared in his field of vision. These 4 people were all very young, and it looked like the oldest among them was only around 20 years old. They walked slowly toward the robbers. Dark clouds covered the sky as if heralding an impending storm. Rustle. At the same time, gusts of strong wind suddenly whipped past, causing the trees to shake and the dust on the ground to be swept up. Who exactly are you all? How dare you attack my Fengxian stronghold? When Baduluo saw this, he took a step forward. His eyes were filled with ferocity. First commander of the Fengxian stronghold, do you remember me? You held the incomparably sharp Qingyun sword in her hand as she slowly walked forward. The sharp tip of the sword split the ground as she dragged it along the ground. Her face was extremely beautiful, and she had bright eyes and white teeth. Her star-like gaze landed on Baduluo. However, her gaze was filled with hatred. Her snow-white clothes had long been stained with bright red blood. However, it was precisely because of this that you displayed a different kind of beauty. Rustle. In an instant, the wind surged and the clouds rose, the strong winds swept up the sand on the ground. Remember you? When Baduluo saw this, he frowned slightly. He deeply immersed himself in his memories. When had he ever met such a beautiful woman? It's normal that you don't remember. After all, countless people died in your hands. Why would you care about the lives of commoners like us? How would you remember the appearance of a girl who narrowly escaped death and was forced to cross the netherworld forest? You slowly walked toward Baduluo. When she saw the face that often filled her nightmares, the memories of that tragic incident from 2 years ago involuntarily surfaced in her mind. At this moment, neither Baduluo or Duan Wui dared to act rashly. After all, the strength that you displayed earlier was not ordinary. The origin of this person was unknown, but she definitely was not some common character. Under the circumstances where they were uncertain about the identities of their enemies, it would be unwise to act rashly. However, compared to Baduluo, Duan Wui's experience and breadth of knowledge was clearly richer. When his gaze landed on the Qingyun sword in Yu's hand, he felt that something was very wrong. The grade of this weapon was not low. Even he had never come into contact with such a high-grade weapon. Most importantly, he could not see through the young man's aura at all. He could not detect any spiritual power fluctuations from his body. However, when the young man glanced at him, his heart palpitated madly as if warning him of an impending threat to his life. Moreover, he felt that this young man's appearance seemed somewhat familiar. He felt that he had seen him somewhere before, but where? No matter how hard Duan Wui racked his brain, he was unable to recall who this young man was. He was different from Duan Wujie. The latter had just seen Yi Xian's portrait, so he naturally knew Yi Xian's identity. However, when Duan Wui left the sect, he had only taken a quick glance, so he did not have much of an impression of him. Forced to cross the netherworld forest. Hearing this, Baduluo narrowed his eyes. The doubtful expression in his eyes became even stronger, but, at the same time, his body also silently tensed up. Ta. When she was close to 50 meters away from Baduluo, Yu halted her footsteps. Her star-like gaze fell upon Baduluo's body. Her eyes were filled with monstrous hatred. Gusts of strong wind surged around them, shaking the large trees around the village. The dried leaves on the ground were swept up by the strong wind. Whoosh! Whoosh! Yu's clothes, which were stained with fresh red blood, fluttered in the wind. Her long, beautiful hair slowly rose and fell on her shoulders. Do you remember what happened at Linshur village 2 years ago? Yu looked at Baduluo and said slowly. Whoosh! The Qingyun sword in Yu's hand suddenly shook. A streak of bright light suddenly lit up, illuminating their originally dark and dim surroundings. At the same time, Baduluo also suddenly came back to his senses, and the events of the past appeared in his mind. What? You are actually the girl who survived the Linshur village massacre. You actually made it through the netherworld forest. When Baduluo heard this, his eyes widened. He now remembered that, 2 years ago, he led the members of Fengxian stronghold to completely slaughter Linshur village. However, at that time, there was indeed a little girl who managed to escape. Baduluo was not the only one who recalled this, the other bandits present at Fengxian stronghold back then did too. They had a deep impression of this girl. In the entirety of Linshur village, Yu was the most delicate and pretty looking girl. It was also because of this that those bandits did not want to kill you, but wanted to bring her back to the stronghold instead. Unfortunately for them, Yu's father's cultivation had reached the 4th level of the refinement state, and he protected Yu with his life. Even though her father was almost cut in half by the first commander, he still managed to throw Yu into the netherworld forest before he died. Of course, at that time, Baduluo also had the opportunity to capture Yu in the netherworld forest. However, at that time, Duan Wui had been overly cautious and did not personally come out to collect the qi and blood essence. As such, Baduluo had been placed in charge of the bloodstone. The qi and blood essence emitted by a person before death was the densest, and it would rapidly dissipate with the passage of time. He was afraid of wasting too much time chasing Yu, and also wanted to avoid any repercussions from Duan Wui. As such, he chose to return to the village and use the bloodstone to collect the qi and blood essence. In order to speed up the pace of collecting the qi and blood essence, the mountain stronghold's commander personally took care of the villagers. He only sent some bandits with lower cultivation to chase after Yu. Earlier, the bandits had wanted to capture Yu alive, so they did not try to kill her directly. Otherwise, Yu's father would not have been able to protect her. After that, Yu's father sacrificed his life to allow you to successfully escape from the bandits' vicious hands. In addition, the bandits were quite afraid of the demonic beasts in the depths of the netherworld forest, so you survived their cautious pursuit. After Baduluo finished collecting all of the chi and blood essence of the villagers, he also hurried to the netherworld forest. However, after several days of fruitless tracking, he did not find any trace of Yu. However, Baduluo was not too bothered about it. After all, Yu was a weak girl. If she was placed in the netherworld forest, she would almost certainly die. She would have been eaten by some demonic beast. However, he did not expect that the reason he could not find you was because, after witnessing her father's death, she had fainted due to grief. Furthermore, she had been taken away by a second-rank demonic beast, an ocelot. Furthermore, it was exactly this ocelot that had scared the bandits away. The ocelot carried you and ran toward the depths of the netherworld forest. However, on the way, it was attacked by a third-rank demonic beast, the chaotic wood snake. In order to save its own life, the ocelot had no choice but to abandon you and flee. How could the chaotic wood snake let the ocelot go? The two chased each other into the depths of the forest and slowly disappeared. It was also because of this that you was able to escape. Perhaps the heavens pitted this girl with a tragic fate. Although you had encountered many disasters in the netherworld forest, she was lucky enough to survive. After wandering around for several months, she finally arrived at the Qingyan sect and met Yi Xian. The turning point in her life, her master. If possible, you did not want to just be his disciple. Chapter 37 You are listening at novelfull.audio. All of You Will Die Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation There were 5 or 6 villages that were completely slaughtered by the Fengxian stronghold, which added up to close to 40,000 people. However, you was the only survivor among them. Humph. You were lucky enough to survive back then. Instead of living peacefully out there, you actually dared to come back. Don't worry, I won't give you a second chance at survival. Seeing this, Baduluo sneered. The other bandits also looked at you with a ferocious expression and then surrounded her. The reason why they had not recognized you immediately was because Yu's appearance had changed drastically. She had become even more beautiful and alluring. Although Yu's facial features did not change much, her temperament had been greatly improved since she awakened the sword jade physique. If the Yu from before could be considered a graceful beauty, then she was now a peerless beauty. Baduluo's eyes were filled with a cold gleam. The 2-meter long broadsword at his waist was instantly unsheathed. He first looked at you, then at Yi Xian and the other 2 who were not far away. Although he did not know the strength of Yi Xian and the others, there was a limit to how strong a young cultivator could be, no matter how talented they were. Most importantly, 2 years ago, you had still been a weak ordinary person. How much could she have changed in just 2 years? In his opinion, no matter how talented you was, her cultivation would at most have reached the 8th or 9th level of the refinement state. Now that he knew Yu's identity, the final doubts in Baduluo's heart were completely dispelled. Perhaps the people around you were not simple, but they were not the only powerhouses here. He also had Duan Wui, who had reached the 8th level of the true essence state by his side. Baduluo had seen Duan Wui's strength with his own eyes. Even he himself could not withstand 2 moves from him. Therefore, according to Baduluo's speculation, after you had luckily escaped from the netherworld forest, she should have become a disciple of a sect. Now, after her cultivation reached a certain level, she had brought her senior and junior brothers back to avenge her village. After I capture you and bring you back to the stronghold, I will have scored a great contribution. As for the senior sister who came with you, she looks pretty good. I'll just keep her around as my wife. In fact, I'll keep both of them. Kiki. Baduluo had a savage grin on his face. The true essence energy in his body surged out into the long saber. A sharp saber chi immediately spread out. At the same time, the surrounding bandits also activated the spiritual power in their dantians. In an instant, all kinds of spiritual power suddenly circulated, forming an extremely terrifying spiritual pressure. The surrounding villagers who were not cultivators immediately felt their chests tighten and knelt on the ground with incomparably terrified expressions. The bandits were all ready to attack. As long as Baduluo gave the order, they would attack you. Although the villagers were scared out of their wits by their aura, Yu's expression did not change at all. Yu gently lifted the Qingyun sword, her jade-like hand gently pressed on the blade of the sword. Her cherry-like mouth opened slightly, and she continued to speak slowly. Father, mother, village chief grandpa and Aunt Huan. Today, you will take revenge for the village. In an instant, her extremely dense true essence energy suddenly surged forth, and her jade-like bones blossomed with a resplendent sword chi power. Boom! An extremely powerful aura suddenly enveloped the surroundings. This is impossible. Seeing this, the bandits stared at her in shock. Those with lower cultivations felt an extremely powerful spiritual pressure sweep over their bodies, but they were unable to sense Yu's exact cultivation level. However, Baduluo was very clear. The other party's cultivation had reached the 5th level of the true essence state, and the density of her true essence energy was even more terrifying than his. How is this possible? Baduluo staggered backward, his eyes filled with disbelief. How could an ordinary person reach the 5th level of the true essence state in such a short time? How did she do it? It was true that ordinary people could not accomplish this feat, but it was different when it came to Yi Xian. At that moment, Baduluo's heart was filled with disbelief. He did not want to believe what was happening right now. He had spent dozens of years cultivating, yet had only reached the 5th level of the true essence state. However, you had only spent 2 years to reach the same level. Could this be any more ridiculous? 2 years ago, he had been able to kill this girl with a single slap. Now, she had reached the same cultivation level as him. Let's attack together. We have to capture her. Baduluo was also someone who could see the big picture, so he quickly calmed down and shouted. Although those bandits were scared, they did not dare to disobey the first commander's order. Besides, no matter how powerful Yu was, there was no way she could possibly withstand a siege by so many people, right? The first commander's cultivation level had reached the 5th level of the true essence state, while the second and third commanders had both reached the 3rd level of the true essence state. If they worked together, you would not be their match. Most importantly, they also had an extremely powerful cultivator from a mysterious sect behind them. Thinking this, the bandits immediately calmed down. They then charged towards you with weapons in hand. Brothers, charge! Charge, take her down. Yeah. There are so many of us. Why should we be afraid of a little girl like her? At that moment, the bandits all roared in anger, trying to give themselves a morale and courage boost. All of you must die today. Seeing this, Yu raised her eyelids slightly. Her eyes were filled with coldness. The Qingyun sword in her hand released a dazzling sword chi, instantly splitting the unfortunate bandit who was the first to rush over into 2 halves. How could a mere 5th or 6th level chi transformation state cultivator withstand the sharp sword chi of the Qingyun sword? When everyone saw this scene, the confident smiles on their faces suddenly faded. Their eyes were filled with fear, and they wanted to retreat. Second and third, let's work together to take her down. What are you all standing there for? Hurry up and attack. Baduluo roared angrily. His true essence energy surged forth, and his feet left a clear mark on the ground as he shot out like a cannonball. The long saber in his hand released a powerful saber chi which slashed toward you. Chapter 38. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Don't come over. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. At the same time, the second and third commanders formed a pincer attack, completely surrounding you. The surrounding bandits also held weapons in their hands as they encircled you. Even though she was faced with attacks from all directions, you did not panic in the slightest. The Qingyun sword in her hand blossomed with brilliant light, fiercely clashing against Baduluo's long saber. Clang! An extremely powerful force suddenly swept out. The long saber in Baduluo's hand instantly bent, and his body was forced back more than 10 steps. Damn it! What grade of weapon is that? Baduluo's expression could not help but change greatly. Whether it was the strength of their true essence energy, or the grade of their weapons, he could not compare to you. Clang, clang. The Qingyun sword in Yu's hand transformed into a sky full of sword shadows. With a crushing stance, she instantly sent the second and third commanders flying. Their cultivation levels were not as high as Yu's, and with the added difference in the grade of their weapons, they were easily and completely crushed by Yu. Were it not for the fact that there were too many bandits surrounding you, she would have only needed 2 moves to kill those 2. After the 2 of them fell to the ground, they looked at their trembling right hands. Their hearts were filled with fear. How could they still dare to continue fighting? The entire process happened within the blink of an eye. Before everyone could react, Yu lightly tapped her feet and stood up. Her sword chi formed a half-moon arc that swept out and slashed toward the bandits. Ah! In an instant, screams could be heard all over the place. In just an instant, that half-moon arc sword chi killed more than 10 bandits. When everyone saw this scene, they were terrified. The first commander could not defeat the other party, and the second and third commanders were sent flying with a single strike. The rest of the bandits could not even withstand a single strike from the other party without dying. How were they supposed to continue fighting like this? What exactly happened? How could an ordinary person from 2 years ago become so terrifying? At that moment, most of the bandits fearfully and frantically ran in all directions. However, would you let them off? Yu's figure moved, and the Qingyun sword in her hand emitted a resplendent light. Her sharp sword aura swept toward the bandits. Each sword strike took the lives of several bandits. Clang clang clang. The sword and the saber clashed madly, but Baduluo was beaten back each. Cracks eventually started appearing on his long saber. Bang! At this moment, the Qingyun sword in Yu's hand burst forth with even more power, which instantly sent the long saber in Baduluo's hand flying. At the same time, Yu's foot kicked Baduluo's abdomen. The terrifying power of her kick was transmitted to Baduluo's abdomen, sending him flying dozens of meters away. Puff! Baduluo struggled to get up, and spat out a mouthful of blood. Why was there such a difference in strength between them? Were they not both 5th level true essence state cultivators? Despite noticing the injured Baduluo, you did not pursue him. Of course, it was not because she was soft-hearted, but rather because she did not want Baduluo to die so easily. You immediately turned her attention to the other bandits. She would never forget that her father had been killed by these bandits. You! Don't come over. If you come over again, I will kill him. The bandit saw Yu's cold gaze and was instantly terrified. In his panicked state, he placed his long saber on the neck of one of the villagers. He looked at Yu with a threatening gaze. However, Yu acted as if she did not hear his threat and slowly walked toward him. With Master around, there was no way these small fries could hurt those villagers. When he saw Yu continue walking forward, the bandit's face became even more ferocious and he roared with all his might. Are you deaf? Can you not hear what I'm saying? If you dare to take another step forward, I'll kill him immediately. Immediately, the bandit's spiritual power surged out crazily. His long saber was about to chop the villager to death. However, before he could do so, he found that an invisible spiritual pressure had completely restricted his movements, rendering him immobile. What? What's going on? The bandit immediately panicked. Those who despise life deserve death. You looked at the bandit expressionlessly. The Qingyun sword in her hand released a sharp sword chi which left a deep wound on the bandit's body. How did the bandits kill her father in the past? She would repay them tenfold today. Ah! The bandit screamed in pain. The deep wound was too painful. However, he could not move at this moment. He could only bear this pain that was worse than death. Run! Run! When the surrounding bandits saw this scene unfold, they felt fear within the depths of their hearts. They fled frantically. However, the next second, their faces also changed drastically. They discovered that their bodies could no longer move. What's going on? What's going on? Many of the bandits' faces were filled with shock. They suddenly realized that there was an invisible force that completely restrained their movements. There was a top-tier powerhouse here. Who was it? However, at this moment, no one knew who this top-tier powerhouse was. When they saw you slowly approaching them with the Qingyun sword in hand, their bodies involuntarily trembled, and their eyes were filled with fear. You did not show them the slightest bit of mercy. She repeated what they had done to her parents back then. At that moment, screams could be heard all over Tashi village. The bandits' screams made everyone's scalp tingle. When the villagers saw this scene, their eyes were filled with disbelief. This girl was too powerful. She had actually dealt with these bandits so easily. Kill these animals. These animals deserve to die. They deserve to die. When the villagers saw the bandits' miserable expressions, they did not show any mercy. Instead, they gritted their teeth and their faces were filled with hatred. Many of the villagers even cried because of this. Those brutal bandits had killed countless villagers and robbed them of almost everything. When they thought of their loved ones dying at the hands of those bandits, their hearts were filled with incomparable grief. Now that they were witnessing the bandits receiving the punishment they deserved, they could no longer restrain the overflowing emotions in their hearts. Chapter 39. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yi Xian. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Seeing this scene unfold, Baduluo was terrified. He had no intention of fighting anymore. Although they were both 5th level true essence state cultivators, why was the difference in their strength so great? Whether it was in terms of cultivation techniques or weapons, he could not be compared to you. Brother Duan, please. At this moment, Baduluo hurriedly turned toward Duan Wui. He knew very well that although Yu was extremely powerful, if Duan Wui made a move, he would definitely be able to easily defeat her. However, when his gaze fell on Duan Wui, he saw an extremely shocking scene. Duan Wui's body could not stop trembling, and his eyes were filled with fear. You are Yi Xian. At the thought of this name, Duan Wui's heart was filled with despair. At this moment, he finally understood why he had been somewhat familiar with this young man's appearance. It was because this guy was Yi Xian of the Qingyun sect. Yi Xian was the peerless genius of the younger generation of the Great Qian dynasty. A top-notch expert who had entered the core formation realm at the age of 20, and who had even become an elder of the Qingyun sect. Yi Xian. What? Seeing this, Baduluo looked puzzled. Rumble. At this moment, thunder and lightning filled the dark clouds in the sky. Baduluo, who had just wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, could not help but tremble. Yi Xian. Who else could make Duan Wui so afraid? Although he was just a bandit, he had heard a little about Yi Xian, the genius who had caused an uproar in the entire Great Qian dynasty. There were only a few key pieces of information about Yi Xian that he needed to focus on. Yi Xian was a top-tier expert whose cultivation had reached the core formation state. Regardless of his background, this cultivation level itself spoke for itself. But was that young man really Yi Xian of the Qingyun sect? The youngest core formation state cultivator in the history of the Great Qian dynasty. Why would such a powerful top-tier expert appear here? Wait, he came here with you. Could it be? At this moment, Baduluo's heart could not help but beat rapidly, and an extremely terrifying possibility appeared in his mind. A top-tier core formation state expert accompanying a true essence state cultivator here. What did this mean? The relationship between the two was definitely not simple. It was either a relationship with an elder or a master-disciple relationship. The other party was Yi Xian, known to be the greatest genius among the younger generation of the Great Qian dynasty. If he was really Yu's master, then Yu's strength could be explained. In just 2 years, a weak ordinary person had stepped into the 5th level of the true essence state. Had it been anyone else, they would have been accused of spouting nonsense, but if it was Yi Xian, it might actually be possible. Yi Xian's accomplishments were extremely legendary, so it was understandable that he would be able to teach such a genius disciple. Thinking of Yi Xian's existence, Baduluo was extremely terrified. Earlier, although he was indeed no match for Yu, if he wanted to escape, the other party would not be able to stop him. However, if Yi Xian was here, even if he had wings, there was no way for him to escape. Baduluo was not like Duanwui, who came from a top-tier sect. He also did not have any powerful trump cards left behind by a master. Most importantly, what was the use of these so-called trump cards in the face of extremely powerful core formation state cultivators? I am Duanwui of the Xianin sect, a disciple of Elder Li. Greetings, Elder Yi Xian. Immediately, Duanwui bowed respectfully to Yi Xian. What? You are from the Xianin sect? Hearing this, Baduluo's expression changed drastically. Damn it. So this guy was a cultivator from the Xianin sect. We've been played. Although Baduluo was very displeased, he saw a glimmer of hope after discovering Duanwui's identity. After all, the Xianin sect was the second most powerful sect in the Great Qian dynasty. Even Yi Xian had to give them some face, right? However, would this guy save me? Would the talented cultivators of these top-tier sects really care about our lives? Thinking this, Baduluo suddenly became uneasy and frantically thought of countermeasures. Yi Xian did not even bother paying any attention to Duanwui. He stood on the giant rock with a calm expression. Duanwui could not help but feel awkward when he saw this. The reason why he lost his composure when he recognized Yi Xian's identity was because he had a secret he had to keep. After all, if Yi Xian found out that he was using the bloodstone to collect the qi and blood essence, it would definitely have a great impact on the Xianin sect. After all, their actions had been cruel and inhumane. If news of this spread, the Xianin sect would become the enemy of the entire Great Qian dynasty, especially the royal family of the Great Qian dynasty. They would never allow the Xianin sect to exist. Although the Xianin sect was ranked second in the Great Qian dynasty, one could not underestimate the power of the royal family. It was due to this that they had chosen to collect the qi and blood essence secretly. In the beginning, Duanwui planned to destroy the Fengxian stronghold together with his junior brother after he had collected enough qi and blood essence from the massacre of Tashi village. This way, no one would be able to reveal the secret of the bloodstone. Moreover, they would be able to gather the qi and blood essence of the cultivators of the Fengxian stronghold while simultaneously completing the bandit suppression mission of the royal family of the Great Qian dynasty. This would thereby increase the reputation of the Xianin sect. This could be said to be a plan that allowed them to kill 3 birds with 1 stone. However, Yi Xian had appeared at this critical moment, completely disrupting his plan. Although Duanwui was extremely resentful, he did not dare to show the slightest bit of dissatisfaction on his face. Damn it! If the elders of my sect had also appeared here, there would be no need to be so aggrieved. Ah! At this moment, the screams of the bandits rang out once again. These bandits had massacred the villagers of Lin Shi village in the past. Those villagers would finally be avenged. As time passed, the bandits gradually lost their lives one after the other to use Qinyan sword. Night fell. The dark clouds in the sky rumbled with the promise of an impending storm. Strong gales blew around, sweeping up the surrounding dust and sand, and spreading the thick smell of blood. Elder Yi, you. Seeing this scene, Duan Wui's face became extremely ugly. Looking at Yi Xian's appearance, it seemed that he was allowing the woman to destroy the Fengxian stronghold. Since Duan Wui himself was also working with Badu Luo, would that mean that Yi Xian would also destroy him alongside them? Although Yu's strength was not weak, if the two sides fought, she would not be a match for him at all. However, the other side had a big shot like Yi Xian. Would he even be allowed to hurt you under Yi Xian's watch? Moreover, judging from Yi Xian's demeanor, he might even kill him directly. However, he was still a cultivator of the Xianin sect. Would Yi Xian really dare to act? He could not guarantee that he would not. After all, Tashi village was located in a remote place. Even if Yi Xian really killed him, who would know or find out? Yi Xian's attitude of ignoring him made him feel increasingly uneasy. Chapter 40. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I also killed your brother. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation, ah. At this moment, a few more mournful screams rang out. Of the entire Fengxian stronghold, only the commanders remained. Yu's snow-white clothes were already soaked in blood. Her slightly disheveled hair danced in the wind. The next second, Yu slowly walked towards the third commander with the Qinyan sword in hand. As a sharp sword light flashed past, the third commander's head was separated from his body. I was wrong. I'm sorry. Please forgive me, okay? I will definitely change in the future. I will definitely be a good person. The second commander saw Yu walking toward him step by step. His body trembled in fear. He was so scared that he lost control of his urinary system. You can keep these words and tell them to those who died in hell. Yu's eyes were cold as she uttered the words that would seal his fate. Back then, countless villagers had begged for mercy in front of the second commander, but did he give them a chance? A sharp sword light flashed past, and the second commander's head was also separated from his body. Now, only the first commander, Badu Luo, was left. Don't kill me. It was all his doing. Feeling the scythe of the Grim Reaper on his neck, Badu Luo was completely flustered, and he ratted out Duan Wui without any hesitation. It's all the Xianin sect's doing. It's all their doing. Originally, we only wanted to seize some wealth, didn't even think of killing you all. But this guy threatened our Fengxian stronghold. They told us that, if we didn't act according to their instructions, that we would be the ones to die. If it wasn't for him, such a tragedy wouldn't have befallen Lin Shi village. It's all his fault. Right, his junior brother is still at our base. They are the main culprits behind the massacre of Lin Shi village. Your true enemies should be them. I'm begging you. Please let me off. Badu Luo's face was filled with terror as he cried out. Gotcha. Ednel.co. Right at this moment, a terrifying bolt of lightning flashed in the sky and instantly lit up Badu Luo's face in the dark night. There was a frightened expression on his face coupled with a desperate look in his eyes. Hearing this, Duan Wui's expression changed drastically. Don't worry, I've already sent his junior brother to hell ahead of time. It's time for you to accompany him. I promise you that I'll send him to hell as well. You looked at Badu Luo icily. What? Junior brother is dead. Hearing this, Duan Wui became increasingly flustered. His junior brother had already died. Did they come from the headquarters of the Fengxian stronghold just now? They were cultivators from the Xianin sect. Were they not afraid of revenge? At this moment, Duan Wui's heart was filled with fear. These guys even dared to kill his junior brother. In that case, there was no way they would let him go. Elder Yi Xian, I'm Elder Li's personal disciple. I still have his warrant with me. Duan Wui immediately panicked. He quickly took out his master's warrant, hoping that the other party would spare his life for the sake of his master. However, Yi Xian ignored him. Seeing this, Duan Wui fell into complete despair. It was obvious that Yi Xian wanted to kill him. Yi Xian, I'm a personal disciple of the Xianin sect. If you kill me, it will definitely cause a war between our two sections. Can you bear such a heavy responsibility? Duan Wui threatened Yi Xian out of desperation. Our Xianin sect is the second-ranked sect. Your Qingyun sect can't afford to mess with us. If you really kill me, my master will not let you off. When that happens, the Qingyun sect will be buried with you. Seeing that Yi Xian was still acting indifferently, Duan Wui suddenly became hysterical. His face was full of madness. I don't want to die. In the end, his fear of death overcame the anger in his heart. Duan Wui was like a dog, kneeling on the ground and begging Yi Xian for mercy. Do you think the death of a mere personal disciple like you will really cause a war between our sections? You think too highly of yourself. Yi Xian looked at Duan Wui indifferently. He then reached out and gently made a grabbing motion. A powerful invisible force immediately grabbed Duan Wui's neck and lifted him up. Elder Yi Xian, I'm begging you. Let me go. This was all my master's doing. It's all my master's doing. Oh right, don't core formation state cultivators like you yearn for the power of qi and blood essence. I have bloodstones on me. As long as you let me go, I'll give you the bloodstones. And I can even take you to the sect's senior and junior brothers and sisters. They also have bloodstones with them. As long as you let me go, I'll tell you where they are. Duan Wui shouted with a fearful expression. Compared to his own life, dignity was worth nothing. He would readily trade the lives of his fellow disciples, and even his master, for his own. As long as he could survive, all of this was not a problem. In any case, when he returned to the sect, he could spin a different story. At that time, Yi Xian would face the wrath of the entire Xianin sect. A few days ago, I killed a cultivator of the Xianin sect in the mountain range. His appearance was similar to yours. You two are probably brothers, right? Yi Xian looked at Duan Wui, who was being choked in mid-air, and could not help but reveal a wry smile. Buzz. Upon hearing this, Duan Wui's mind felt like it had been struck by a thunderbolt. Wu Jie, you actually killed my brother. Yi Xian, I won't let you off. Duan Wui screamed crazily, his eyes full of hatred. Seeing this, a sneer hung on the corners of Yi Xian's mouth. The reason he told Duan Wui about this was to completely infuriate him and to reveal his true colors. Would Yi Xian let him live? Impossible. Yi Xian, you will definitely suffer the revenge of the Xianin sect. You and the Qingyun sect will be buried with my brother. Duan Wui revealed a crazed expression and roared hysterically. However, in the face of absolute strength, all resistance was futile. Alright, enough of your nonsense. It's time for you two brothers to be reunited. Don't worry, I will send your beloved master and your whole sect down to join you very soon. Yi Xian said indifferently, after which he activated the golden core power in his body.